All right, welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Whether you're watching on YouTube, did you know that we also post all of these interviews on YouTube? So you can go to the Impact Driven Leader YouTube channel to be able to watch those. Would love for you guys to watch them, comment there. Or if you're listening, wherever you're listening to on this podcast, your favorite podcast player, would love for you to rate, subscribe, leave us a comment. We just got a couple new comments and love hearing from people just what they're learning. You know, my sole mission on hosting this podcast is to be able to help other leaders get healthy too. In that process, I need to make sure that I'm daily practicing ways to be healthy, whether that is having great conversations with guests that I normally have, or today's a solo episode. I am going to be sharing with you about the newest book, the book that will be our book for the book of the month for March, Hero on a Mission. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the cover of it right there by Donald Miller. It's his latest release. If you're not familiar with the author Donald Miller, he's written several memoirs and then a handful of business books, Building a Story Brand, Business Made Simple, and now this book, Hero on a Mission. And I'm excited to be able to unpack it today, share a little bit, not spoil it. There's a whole lot more in the book I'm not going to get into. We'll talk about it in the book club. We'll talk about it as part of the roundtable. But I want to introduce it to you as the audience today as another tool to use in your leadership toolbox. You know, as I talk to different leaders, as I read different books, one of the things that really catches me by surprise is how many times authors, speakers, presenters, and this is not a shot over the bow. This is just something that I question, I think about, is how many of them build in a framework or a blueprint. I think about it like this. I'm a sports fan, and I believe it's kind of like this. If we have our NFL playbook, you know, we just wrapped up a couple weeks ago with the Super Bowl, the Los Angeles Rams winning, and if the head coach, Sean McVay, if he had one playbook, and he said, these are our plays, learn our plays. These are our handful of plays. These are the only plays that we will ever play with. Okay. And so he goes out into a game and he goes through his playbook and they're getting beat or maybe they have a play that works. And so they go back to that play and it works again. And they're like, well, this is the play. This is, you know, we'll just keep doing this. And some coaches have that model. It's like, keep running the play until it doesn't work anymore. But all of a sudden when it doesn't work, do you say we need to scrap our offense? Do you say that, oh, that no longer works, it must be wrong? Or did you not take time to learn why it worked in the first place? Yeah, that's what I believe when we come into leadership. There's a lot of interactions. There's a lot of situations that happen in our daily leadership journey that we've never seen before. I mean, the pandemic, as we're waning into the waning days of what that looks like with all the different protocols and all the different restrictions, we're starting to see less and less. We go back over this 2+ year process and how many people were prepared for what the pandemic offered. The challenges leading people, the challenges of meeting people with empathy and practicing that out that you hear me talk about so often. And I think the businesses, the leaders that really struggled were ones that were looking for that exact play. They were waiting to call Sean McVay on the headset and say, Coach, what play do we run here? I saw that from a lot of leaders, regardless of their tenure leading. They were looking for a mentor. They were looking for someone to say, hey, what play do I put in here? What play do we run? And often what happened is people were lost. Donald Miller talks about it in his book, Hero on a Mission. I had the opportunity, not only have I read the book, but I had the opportunity when I was at a leadership event last fall. I was at John Maxwell Exchange Program, and Donald came and spoke to us. And that's where I first heard about this. And as soon as I heard Donald go through it, and he started talking about it, and he made a couple points, and he made this point right here. We have this script. We have a scripted play like the Super Bowl. The Los Angeles Rams had plays that they were going to go run. And as Donald shares, when all of a sudden there's no longer a playbook, when you take that playbook, you throw it out the window and you're like, what next? That's where we get lost. As Donald shares in his book, Hero on a Mission, we've gone through a season here where we no longer had scripts, where we weren't sure what follows along in the plot next. That happens to us in life. You think about it, we're born, we go through childhood, we start school, then you go through school, we graduate school, then we move on to a profession or further education. And once we get through that, then all of a sudden we look for a mate, we maybe get married, or maybe we really try to drive through our career and really develop our profession. And then, maybe we have kids. And it happens a lot of times to people that are my age, maybe your age. We're into our early 40s and we're like, what next? Oh, what does life have for me next? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Why are things happening to me? Do I choose to look around and say, as Donald describes in his book, there's 4 different types of people. There's 4 different personas that you can have at any moment. And that's a victim. Oh, woe is me, man. This is how life happened to me. These are my circumstances and it's always going to be like this. And it's just, this is what it is. Or maybe it's the villain. The villain is the character that I find most intriguing. As Donald describes it in different ways, and you think about your favorite movie, who that villain is. And that villain has usually been hurt just as much as the victim. But instead of the victim choosing to be woe is me, the villain decides I'm going to get back at them. I'm going to, look out for me and me only, and then I'm going to attack out of my pain. Whereas the victim just kind of wallows in their pain. There's a third person in every movie and every story, and that's the hero. The person that decides to look around and say, there isn't a script here. There's maybe not a plot line. There's maybe not a exact thing to follow. I'm not just going to continue along. And they choose to make something more. As Donald talks about in his book, and he goes into the discussion for Man's Search of Meaning by Viktor Frankl in quite a lot of his book. And when we come through the seasons of life and we're asking what's next, ultimately the question really that we're answering is, what does life mean? What do I mean? I've shared this with many people. If you're new to the podcast, I thank you for joining here. One of the things that I've done for several years, I had a coach really impress upon me the value of growing in my wisdom. And I chose to do that, part of a daily routine that I've had now for going on almost 4 years. And that's reading the book of Proverbs every day. I'm a person of faith, and so it fits into that line of faith. But I also know that Solomon, the author of Proverbs, is widely respected through a lot of different beliefs. And as I continue to go through that book, one of the things that interests me is not that book, but another book that he wrote. Again, if you're someone of Christian faith or Judaism beliefs, then you understand these books. And it's the book of Ecclesiastes. And it was written by Solomon. And in that book, Solomon, kind of much like Viktor Frankl, was at a point in life, it's like, why? What is this about? It's this journey of asking those questions that I've wrestled with. I've wrestled it with at times. I've wrestled in my early adulthood. I can remember leaving college. I was 21 years old, and I'm like, why is this? What is this about? Why am I here? It took me some 20 years later to be able to answer that, to understand the meaning. It's why I have this podcast. It's to help other leaders get healthy too, because I had to get healthy, and that's my story. Well, that ties in with Donald's book here, Hero on a Mission, as we've discussed the victim, the villain. Now we're talking about this hero. This hero is every one of us. As Donald describes in the book, is the moment that we decide to no longer be a victim, the moment that we no longer decide to be the villain, is the moment we decide to take on the hero's place in the book, in the story. I think this is what's most pivotal, as everyone that's listening, that maybe you're aspiring to be a leader, maybe you're a leader. I challenge you that the reality is every one of us are leaders in some way, shape, or form. There's someone looking at us that we have an impact or influence over. Part of being the impact-driven leader and choosing that mindset is to make an impact that drives people's lives to something better. And so this idea of a hero that Donald breaks down in his book is that we're choosing to say, my life has more meaning. There's a purpose to my life. I'm here for something. It's Donald talks about in his book, Viktor Frankl has a 3-step plan for finding meaning. And part of that is really understanding this evolution of a hero. We've seen it in every single movie. It's this idea of how did the hero become the hero? And as Donald shares from Victor's work, it's the vision of a better future. It's you choose to latch onto a meaning in life. That hero chooses to be better because they have a vision for a better future, whether it's them helping others, whether it's helping themselves and helping others. But it's a vision for a better future. As a leader, our greatest opportunity to lead people is by sharing the vision that we have and inviting them into it. The second step, as Donald released here from Viktor Frankl, was this idea that we have an interest in the world outside of ourselves. I came up with this the other day. I was thinking about it as, the idea between being a narcissist and someone who is, completely oblivious is that a narcissist, in order that they live, they have to be of benefit of someone else in order that they can have everything they want. If I had all the gold, the world's gold, I need to trade that gold for my food to live, to whatever else. I mean, have all the gold's world, but I make a trade. And in the process of trading that, someone else is getting benefited. If I'm a complete, indentured servant to society, and all of a sudden I look at it and everyone's going to hand out to me, I'm indentured. I'm not, it's so much. I'm altruistic. That's the proper word. So I'm either a narcissist or altruistic. Please bear with me as we're going through this. I'm trying to stay with my notes here, but if we're completely altruistic, at some point we have to care enough for ourselves to take care of ourselves. As I unpack this here from Viktor Frankl, as it's shared in the book Hero on a Mission, is the first step is to have a vision for a better future. The next is an interest outside of the world of myself, which to me is really moving that narcissist to an altruistic position. But yet the altruistic person has to have some type of self-belief that you get outside of yourself, but yet you're of value to the world. And I believe that's the step that we can find ourselves into is finding that middle ground. Now, the last one, I think, is this further step. It's the willingness to engage conflict, to be a part of it. Donald talks a lot about it. It's a discussion from Viktor Frankl, logotherapy. He released it post World War II, after he was, released from the concentration camp. And this idea of people can't find meaning when they numb themselves with pleasure. It's really conflict endured brings meaning. It goes back to the discussion I had earlier when Solomon wrote the book Proverbs, and then after that he wrote the book Ecclesiastes. And if you're familiar with that book, he, quite honestly, Solomon's like, woe is life. Why does this all been? It's all worthless. And at the end of it, it's like, because of that, it's all worth it. That's what I learned here from Viktor Frankl. That's what I learned from reading from Donald, is this idea that life isn't about pleasure. It's been said that the light can't truly shine without darkness. Said another way, stars are the brightest when the sky is the darkest. It's this idea that conflict endured brings meaning. It is the story up until the point where the hero is like, I want to be changed, and a part of that change, that entire journey has meaning. I shared this with a friend, and it could be really hard. It can be hard to wrap your arms around and really sit in the place of understanding, why is this? What meaning is this life? And I've shared before, if you're new to the Impact Driven Leader podcast, thank you for being here. But part of my journey and story is when I was 14 years old, my younger brother died in a farming accident. He was 3, I was 14. And this further goes on to that question of what meaning do I have in life as a 21-year-old? And it was a couple years ago, as I've shared, that I had the revelation that his life had meaning. I would not be here talking about this. I would not be sharing the journey that I had to walk through to understand the barriers around myself that protected me, the armor that I wore, the conditions that I learned to be protective of myself were the very barriers that held me back from being in relation, connection, and the ability to lead others. It was the story I had written as a villain or maybe as a victim until the choice I made as a hero. And it was through that experience and understanding the experiences I had, there was value in them to share with others. And that gets us into the fourth person that Donald talks about in his book, Hero on a Mission. And I think this is where we transition from that person of engaging acting, that contributor, that person that's a part of the team, to someone that's leading the team, to someone that helps others make a greater impact. And that's the guide. Donald, in his previous book, Building a Story Brand, walks through the description of the guide as Yoda. Yoda to Luke Skywalker. You could go through a lot of other examples, but it really is that mentor, that person that helps guide the person, the hero, through what they once were. Now, it's that action to me that makes this book very compelling. It's the idea that not only are we following life scripts, at some point, we're going to no longer see a script of which to watch and play out. We need to create our own script. It's when we create our own script that we're no longer trying to perform for performing's sake. If you've listened to the previous episode where I interviewed Sabrina Horn, the idea of make it, don't fake it. To me, a faker is a villain. We're choosing to be a hero in making it. And only by these steps of making it can I then turn around and offer my hand to someone else so they too can make it. And that then leads me into the place of being a guide. I believe ultimately that in order to be a guide, you have to go through your hero journey. That journey of understanding why you are what you are, to go through all the different facets of your story, and then to sit down with a clean slate and write a new story. What routines do you need to put in place? What barriers do you need to put around you? Who do you need to invite into your story to be the character that maybe is going to act as your guide? Or maybe they're going to help direct you in the path to find that place. So we all have difficult aspects of our story. And we can choose to let them cloud us and weigh us down like the victim. Or we can choose to be jealous, have vengeance, stay where we're at, and play the victim. Or we can choose to transform, to become the hero in our story, to be an example for others, to say, yeah, you do have meaning. You have value. You're valuable to me. Just like you listening. If you didn't choose to listen to it, I might still record it, but it wouldn't have value. And my hope and desire is, as you're listening to this podcast today, as you're collecting some of this information, as you're thinking about what would it be to be a hero yourself, maybe hopefully you go out and buy Donald's book, go through the practices he has, and I encourage you to do it with someone else. Because what I've learned is it's real easy to sink back into the villain place or to tell yourself that you're the victim. But when you're linked arms with someone else, man, that's when it's easy to transform. And a hero is the one that learns and transforms. How a hero solidifies that as part of their being and really writing out that script is the moment that they decide to be a guide and help others win. Too often, I think a leader chooses to follow the same scripts that were written before them. It was the leader during the pandemic that was looking around and choosing to protect and following the scripts of other people, as opposed to following the script and understanding why they were doing what they were doing. Because it's the offensive coordinator in the Super Bowl that can look at a play, understand what the other team's doing, and say, hey, if we turn this, if we tweak this, if we stop being the villain or the victim, and we create a new lens to look through it, we're the hero, and everyone else gets to join us. Because it's not about me winning. It's about how can I help others win? Because that's what a guide does. And I believe a person who chooses to be a leader that makes an impact stops and looks at their story, takes account of it, appreciates where they're at and why, acknowledges the challenges, the hardships, the fire that rendered them who they are today, and says, you're worth it. I'm going to act myself to help you win. I'm going to play my position the best I can, not so I look good, but so you look really good. Because I believe that's what it means to go from a hero to a guide. I believe when you do that, you become a hero on a mission. I invite you to now take part in the Impact Driven Leader Book Club. You can join along with us this month as we read through the Hero on a Mission. I'll give you a question every day to ponder. You could even get ready and geared up for joining the roundtable. We'll start again with another offering of that here in April. And I hope you got value out of this. A little bit shorter episode, not an interview, but just me sharing my own context, what I learned from this book, what I learned from sitting down, listening, and taking notes from Donald that day back in November. Because there's a lot of things that I've had to apply and learn and change. Because I'm rewriting the story of what it is to be a hero in my life. Knowing that there's people that look at me, whether it's my wife, my children, other people around me that I don't even know are watching me. And I can have a tremendous amount of influence on them and be impactful in their life. But in order to be a guide in their life, I first have to be a hero in my life. I have to learn to transform, and I have to put people around me that walk with me in that pursuit. I hope you choose to do the same. I truly hope you got value out of this episode today, because my mission is to help other leaders get healthy too. If you got value from this, I'd love for you to share it with someone else. Subscribe, give a review, rating wherever you listen, or if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. You got to see my shiny teeth and shiny head today. But I appreciate you being a part of this community, because when as it said, when the leader gets better, everyone gets better. When a hero wins, everyone wins. Thank you for being here. I'll catch you guys next time.